Hello and welcome to Reaching for the Moon, presented by Everglades Moon Local Council, Florida chapter of Covenant of the Goddess. COG supports individual works by its covens, members, and local councils. It's a vibrant network of a myriad of Wiccan and witchy resources, religious support, friendships, service opportunities, and more. To find out more, visit our website, emlc.net, our Facebook page, facebook.com/EvergladesMoon, or Twitter, @EMLCTweets.
Hello everyone, this is Lady Bridget, and welcome to episode 17 for Yule 2015. We have an absolutely packed show for you today. On our regular segments, we have FooDoo with Qabal, where he reveals the mystery behind the recipe for making Madeleines. Nice Witch with Shaylee will explore the common sense needed to safely navigate through the holidays. Lord Riekin takes us further through the medicinal uses for kitchen spices in It'll Grow on You, presenting the letters N, M, and O. Pandie gives us a very clever idea for incorporating spellwork into our decorating in Pandie's Pagan projects. And of course, we will have music and song. At our recent Turning the Tides festival, I was able to interview a friend I have not seen in a very long time, Cossette, and here is her story and that interview coming up first. This is Lady Bridget, and I am here at Turning the Tides with a former member of Beachfire Coven, also former member of EMLC, who relocated from Florida to Australia about a year ago?
It'll be 4 years in February.
Oh my gosh, time flies. Okay, wow. This is Cossette. Do you have a magical name that you go by?
Sitara, but most people know me as Cossette.
Awesome. Do you want to tell us about that particular journey? First of all, how did you end up in Australia?
I fell in love.
Oh, that's a good reason.
Yeah, a lot of expats that end up in Australia end up there for one of two reasons. Either work, they find some work over there, or they find a person over there. And so that's how I ended up there. I met a guy and I moved to Australia.
Wow. And you stayed for 3 months with him?
Yeah.
And then you decided it was a keeper.
Well, my visa expired. The tourist visa is only for 3 months, so I had to come back. So when I came back, I immediately started the process to be able to, to stay longer. So I got a 12-month visa and then finally residency.
So you're resident?
I'm a temporary resident right now, and that will become permanent next year.
Oh, so do you actually change your citizenship?
I can apply for citizenship in about 5 years, and thankfully, Australia is one of those countries that offers dual citizenship. I don't know if I'll pursue that at this time, but it's an option.
Oh, good. Well, that's nice. Yeah, just in case things don't work out. Gotta have a backup plan. So what's it like? I mean, aside from the language difference, because I'm sure that the colloquialisms and the terms that we use, especially in ritual and things like that, are not the same. Or is it? Is it mostly the same?
There's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. For me, the immediate things that struck me were in the landscape. So, for example, over there, the sun travels north versus here goes south.
Oh.
The moon waxes and wanes in the opposite direction. So those are kind of issues that pagans, the pagans that cast circle, they actually debate that quite a lot. Is, do you follow the direction of the sun? But that's counterclockwise to what is traditional. Mm-hmm. So that's something that gets debated about, as well as where to position the elements and the directions, because that just feels very different. Not only in Melbourne where I live, but it really changes from whether you live in Melbourne or Sydney or Tasmania or Northern Australia somewhere. It's just different everywhere. So people have those conversations quite a lot about what to do with that, as well as how to honor the land that we are all inhabiting, which, people generally acknowledge the Aboriginal people as traditional owners and how we can honor them and work with that land, knowing that there's a lot of pain in that land still as a result of the colonization process. So those are the kinds of hot topics that people talk about quite a lot.
It's similar to the conversation in this country about how we acquired the land from the Native Americans, and I use the term acquired in a very loose manner regarding that. But I'm kind of thinking that the conversations are kind of similar,
yes,
although maybe more immediate.
Yes. Here, you can go a long time without really ever talking about, Native American people. And Aboriginal people are very often, they're talked about quite a lot in Australia. You hear, they're present. They're present, definitely. Another thing that's very different is, of course, the Sabbats, right? So in Australia, we celebrate Christmas during the summer solstice. Yeah. Easter's in the fall, Halloween is in the spring. So Halloween falls alongside Beltane, if you want to celebrate both. That feels really weird.
So what do you do?
Well, for the first couple of years, I didn't know what to do. I felt like this just felt so strange to me. I couldn't make it work. And then finally what I ended up doing for example, with Beltane and Halloween is that I ended up focusing on the ancestral part of Beltane as the mirror of Samhain. So that's how I make it work. But again, these are things that pagans debate about quite a lot. Yeah. How to celebrate the wheel in lieu of these sort of secular holidays that still have some pagan origins to them and still have that pagan influence, but they're very just calendar dates. They're totally divorced from their seasonal.
They are down there.
They are. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it would make sense to just celebrate Beltane in October, if that's what's happening.
That's what we do. Yeah, for the most part.
And not worry about it being quote-unquote Samhain on the calendar, because the calendar is a man-made construct.
Right. But people also celebrate Halloween secularly.
Oh, so you can't go out and buy Samhain decorations in May.
Correct.
Because you have to buy them in October and then hold them till May.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, here it's a little different because, our Ostara occurs, in my tradition, probably usually about 2 or 3 weeks before the Easter happens. So by the time Easter comes around, I'm already sick of it because we had our star, 2-3 weeks ago, and I'm already moved on.
Yeah. So over there, secularly, Easter is celebrated in the fall, and yet still with all those bunnies and chickens and pastel-colored eggs. So.
Like it's new birth.
Exactly.
Oh, that's got to be confusing.
It is a little strange.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That is bizarre. There's kind of a disconnect then.
Yeah, there is. I mean, Australia is very secular, but it is a Christian country, and those holidays, as secular as they may be, they're still Christian holidays, and they use all that imagery, and they're based on the calendar. They're completely disconnected from their seasonal origins. So, that's when Easter is. That's when it is. It doesn't matter that it's not spring. It's still just the month that it is.
And that's going to be really hard from a pagan perspective, because we're used to celebrating the seasons with the earth, because we're turning the mill of magic, and we're helping the earth move the seasons. And
it's the same with Christmas coming up. I mean, a lot of us celebrate Christmas with our families, but we also, as pagans, will be celebrating the summer solstice. So we have people are still celebrating Christmas with images of winter, right? In a way, much like we do in Miami, even though it's not that cold, but we still have these these fir pine trees and fake snow and reindeer and snowmen. They do that in Australia too in the middle of summer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that must have been a little difficult to get used to.
Yeah, it has been. And I'm still adjusting. I think it'll take a long time. The first 2 years I did feel like completely upside down. And now it's better, but it's a process.
Yeah,
it's a process.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, what else is different about the pagan culture?
So Australia is roughly the size of the United States with the population of Texas. So the pagan pool is much smaller and much more spread out. So it is hard to get people, to connect people, to get them in one place. There's a lot of regulations. So in Australia, it can be hard to put on events. Like you have to buy insurance. It can be very expensive. So there's a lot of little rules and regulations that can get in the way of putting events together. So there certainly are communities and there are covens and there's a wonderful, say, reclaiming group in my city. But it can be hard to connect pagans there just because there's not that many of them. It's a very big city. People are very spread out. So there are some festivals, like the Mount Franklin Festival has been going on for like more than 30 years now.
Oh, good.
So, I mean, they do happen, but there's not the abundance of events.
You don't have a lot of choices
like here. No.
Yeah.
And, so, and also the numbers aren't there. Like, you go to FPG, you have 800 people. You go to Pantheacon, thousands of people. You won't see that in
What is
Australia.
a typical Australian festival?
You're lucky if you can get 50 people.
Oh, wow.
And 100 is probably considered big. Like,
so Turning the Tides would be a good-sized festival in Australia.
Yeah,
and here it's really small potatoes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Kind of, we like it that way.
We like it that way.
We like it intimate. But yeah, that's kind of hard to fathom. I know sometimes I get emails from people, who live in different areas, and they'll say, could you do more about this area or more about that area on the podcast? And actually, because we're dealing with a small talent pool who all live in one South Florida area, I can't put myself in someone's shoes if they live in Canada or even Australia, because I don't have that
Even
experience.
in Florida, like living in Miami, for example, is totally a different experience than living in Central Florida or in the Panhandle. Completely different.
This is true. This is very true. And the cultures are different, too. Is paganism as accepted over there as... Well, maybe accepted is the wrong word. You can't throw a rock in South Florida without hitting a Botanica.
Right.
Or a New Age store or something. There's no lack of places to get your candles, your incense, your Florida water, and that kind of thing.
There's definitely metaphysical shops in probably all the major cities and even in small towns, but those words like pagan, heathen, that is not so widely heard. Most people probably don't know what that is,
So
or
what do they
maybe
call
afraid of
themselves?
it. Well, pagans know, but in terms of the broader community, it's not like here where people just don't. You see an initiate, a Lokumi initiate walking in the supermarket, you don't blink an eye. That would be weird in Melbourne. Like, if you saw somebody like that, people might be like, what is that? What's going on there?
Why are they wearing all white or something?
Yeah, and you don't really see that anyway. Like, as far as I know, there are no botanicas in Melbourne or any stores that cater to any kind of ATR tradition. In fact, I've been posting pictures on my Facebook, and some of my friends who live in Australia were like, oh my God, I'd love to have that. Can you bring some of that back for me? Because it can be very hard to acquire it or very expensive.
The shipping
to acquire it,
Yeah, because I know you could buy pretty much anything online.
Yeah.
But getting it shipped and through customs and
Very
waiting
difficult.
for months and months for it to arrive, that's another story.
Yeah. Legally, pagans fare just about as well or worse off than anyone else, but we don't have like the kind of legal recognition that we have in the U.S. So, for example, there's at least one that I can think of. There's probably a few more Wiccan churches that have gone through the process, but it's few and there's not very many. Like, the idea of you having that kind of right and getting holidays off for religious observances, that's not really a thing.
Not yet.
Not yet, anyway.
Well, I think if they're a smaller percentage of the population, that's part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
On the bright side, you can be an officiant, a wedding officiant pretty easily, so pagans can do that quite easily.
So they don't really need to get ministerial credentials
Correct.
to do that.
Right. They just go through a
that's nice.
course, get registered, go through the process, and they can become, that's pretty nice.
So that you're not really cut off from doing what you need to do in the community.
It's just a different
legalities.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we bend.
Yeah, exactly.
We bend and we shape and we
We make it work.
flex.
Make it
Exactly. Make it work. That's what we got to do. That's really interesting. It's really awesome. Are there any other differences that you can think of?
Those are the major ones. I mean, at the end of the day, people still want a lot of the same things. They want workshops, they want to get together, they want to meet other pagans, they want to learn. And so there's definitely a lot of people, and I've been lucky to meet quite a number of wonderful pagans who are into doing that work, who will, who want to build community. And they have, there are roadblocks, there's lots of obstacles, there's lots of people who poo-poo the ideas, but they keep at it. They stick by it and they keep working at it. And I'd say that, there's definitely been some weird things that have happened in the Victorian community where I live, but there's also some really great people doing awesome work there.
Do you think some of the obstacles are from pagans that because they just don't know what community is going to look like?
It's largely the result of weird witch wars that have happened over the years that have left people really burned.
Yeah.
And suspicious of each other, some predators in the community. That kind of stuff has really hurt the Victorian community.
And there's been a lot of communities everywhere that have faced those same hurdles. And I can think of a couple right off the top of my head in the U.S. where they've had witch wars and things have completely disbanded and they no longer have any trust.
Yeah, the impact can be really long-lasting and it takes a lot of work to come back from that.
Yeah. That's very sad. Does the internet play a great part in getting people together?
Oh, yeah, I would think so. I mean, God, there's so many Facebook groups now, so many people connecting on Facebook and talking about issues on Facebook. Facebook is such a force in that. Like, even when I go to, like, the Witch's Voice, which used to be the place where I would go to see the list of groups in your neighborhood,
right?
There, you see very few of them for Australia in the Witch's Voice, but if you go to Facebook, you'll find a lot.
Wow.
So definitely there's a lot of conversations happening online. Yeah.
Do they have like a meetup kind of thing, like, the meetup groups here?
Pagans in the pub.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But that kind of,
it's that English pub culture.
Yeah. It's cool, but my second thought is, well, what about people that don't drink?
It's just kind of a catch-all name.
Oh,
like, you can still get coffee there. Kids can go there. Families can go there. It's not a bar like the way we think of it here.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah, because my second connotation was, it's all about alcohol. Because we do have to deal with the party pagan mentality.
Absolutely.
Which you have that there too.
Yes,
I think it's human nature.
It's very toxic.
Yeah. Yeah, we try to tone that down through education and, helping people to understand that this really isn't about just not having to drive home after you drink.
Absolutely.
It's supposed to be spiritual, not just about spirits. The alcoholic kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pagans in the Pub. That's a cute name.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
What do they do?
So there's a few that run in the city but it's just a social event. It's very much like a meetup. People just get together for a few hours, have a beer or have a coffee, have some snacks, and just chat and get to know other people and help build community.
So you said there's covens there?
There are, yeah.
Are there the usual traditions, or are there...
The Alexandrian tradition is really strong in Australia in general, and but they, keep them themselves a lot.
Do they have any Australian traditions?
Yes, there's a few. G'day Parma has a tradition. I think it's called Wildwood. That's an Australian-born tradition.
Okay.
The reclaiming folks, even though it's reclaiming, they still very much work with the local spirits, and they have their own twist on it, which is really cool. So, there's a few, but there's also a lot of just eclecticism as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's to be expected, especially in a community where they're so spread out. So there's a lack of teachers, and people have to, get the information wherever they can.
Absolutely. And we don't have, and every Australian pagans, of course, they're working with a lot of material, books and texts and things that are coming from either North America or Europe. So they are familiar with that, and they are familiar with those writers, but we don't ever get to see them.
Right.
It's not like we can,
they don't tour.
They don't tour, and most of the small pagan groups can afford to bring out, well-known pagans all the way out to Australia for a workshop or a conference. It would be.
Yeah. It's expensive enough to get them to go somewhere in the States. Yeah, exactly. It's a couple $1,000s in airfare and, all of that. I can just imagine. Is it a long flight to Australia?
For me, from my door in Miami to my door in Melbourne, it's about 25 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Door to door.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's with the shortest possible layover between, here and there. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a long flight.
So you really got a plan for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably won't be back here for another couple of years. Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you took the time to talk to us, and I'm very glad to see you again.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I've missed everyone, and it's just a joy to be here.
And I mean, Facebook really helps, and the internet really helps, but it's not the same thing as a hug.
No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So this month's topic is actually a surprise. I had planned something else, but the topic was spawned by lots of private comments after I baked some cookies a few days ago. Lots of people were interested in the recipe because of the mystique around the cookie, and that cookie is the Madeleine. Madeleines are simple French butter cakes that are baked in a scallop pan, and they were made famous by the French essayist and novelist Marcel Proust, who called them magical. They spawned his immense novel In Search of Lost Time. Madeleines, as he thought, should taste like hope and remind you of childhood, and frankly, that's a tall order for a simple recipe. What I realized about this recipe is that going over it might be useful for Yule baking, and I hope that there will be lots of Yule baking. You see, the recipe is actually very, very simple, but there are quite a few unstated things in the recipe that you actually have to do in order for it to come out right. If you're not familiar with the Madeleine, they look like scallops, and a picture will be up on the EMLC website. They are, as I mentioned, the scallop-shaped golden cookies, and the dough is closer to a batter than a sugar cookie, but not quite pourable like you might think of as a pancake batter. So what I'm going to do is read a recipe and then add the secret commentary, that magical part that you might not know unless someone tells you. So the ingredients are 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 2/3 cup of sugar, 1/2 cup of AP flour, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/2 teaspoon of grated lemon peel, a pinch of salt, 1 1/4 stick of unsalted butter, and some powdered sugar for topping after the cookies are baked. So let's go through the preparation as well. It's preheat oven to 375 degrees, generously butter and flour a pan for the Madeleine. Using a mixer, beat eggs and the 2/3 cup of sugar in a large bowl until it's blended. Beat in the vanilla, lemon peel, and salt. Add flour. Beat just until blended. Gradually add the cooled melted butter in a steady stream, beating just until blended. Spoon 1 teaspoon of the batter into each mold in the pan. Bake until brown, about 16 minutes. Let them cool 5 minutes. Remove them from the pan. Dust cookies with powdered sugar. So that's really a bunch of lies. Not all of it, but it's close. And enough that there's a good chance that you'll have little failures on hand. So let's go through it again, this time with the annotation. The 2 eggs. They don't tell you, but the eggs have to be a room temperature. They should be not just out of the fridge. And speaking of room temperature, that's not Florida room temperature, that's France room temperature in the late spring, and that would be about 70 degrees. That means take your eggs out and let them sit on the counter for at least 10 to 15 minutes before using them. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. This should be vanilla, real vanilla, not imitation vanilla. Don't even try with that stuff. As to the real vanilla, there are 3 types. There's Tahitian vanilla, Mexican vanilla, and bourbon vanilla. That's also called Madagascar vanilla. The Madagascar vanilla is the most common and the one that will work easiest for this recipe. But if you really want a complex cookie, the Mexican vanilla is best. But you'll also be paying a lot more for it as you will for the Tahitian. So Madagascar will work fine, and like I said, it's widely available. 2/3 cup of sugar. This is granulated white sugar, the common stuff. Usually no confusion here. 1/2 teaspoon of grated lemon peel. You don't really need a grater. What you do need to do is to avoid the white part of the lemon at all costs. The easiest thing to do is to take a vegetable peeler and gently take off strips of the lemon zest, the yellow part with no rind. The rind is exceptionally bitter, and it will get worse when baked. If you use a grater, do so gently, and if you use a peeler, just line up the slices on a cutting board and chop them up finely with a chef's knife. They should look like yellow dust bits when you're done. The 1/2 cup of AP flour. The AP means all-purpose. This again is straightforward, but if you buy the basic generic brands, you'll be fine. However, if you buy the higher-end brands of flour, you may get more protein than you bargained for, and the cookie will end up chewier than you expect. So stick to the basic generic flour. Finally, make sure it's just flour. Some flours add baking powder, and they're often termed self-rising. Self-rising is a nope. It's just plain flour, nothing added, so that it works exactly as the recipe expects. A pinch of salt. Okay, so how much is a pinch? It's better to understand the purpose of the salt. Adding any salt to a cookie will prevent it from being one-dimensional. It actually heightens the sweetness of the cookie. The exact amount doesn't matter much. You're just adding a hint of salt, a smidge, which is about 2 tads. Finally, that stick and a quarter of butter that has been melted. First, that butter should be fresh. Get the latest available date when you buy butter and keep it in its protective wrapper until it's ready to use. When you slice off the chunk, take the chunk that's not being used and cover it in plastic wrap. Butter has a very annoying property in that it picks up food odors very, very fast. So it really should be fresh and freshly cut for this recipe. Now for the melting, this is not a microwave thing. This is a saucepan moment. Start the burner on high, put the pan and the butter on it, and then turn off the burner. This should be a slow melt for the butter to liquefy and leave some foam at the end. Then let it cool slightly. It should have no chunks in it, and it should not be re-solidified at all. If you need to leave it for a while, keep it in a warm place until it's ready to use. Now on to the making of things. Preheating the oven to 375. This is a lie. Preheat implies that when you set the heat and when the oven chimes or pings, whatever it does, that you're at temperature. That's not always true. The better strategy is after the oven pings, wait another 15 minutes. If you have a thermometer separate from the oven, one that's independent that you can put in there, that will help a lot to verify that the oven temperature is 375. There's a lot of work that has been done on oven temperatures, and it turns out that the oven temperatures aren't regulated very well. If you want to regulate the oven temperature, not only should you check with a thermometer, but it's also good to add a baking stone. That stone will keep the heat constant. What you really want to do more than anything is to make sure that you're at 375, and if you're relying on your oven thermometer, is to let the oven sit at temperature for another 15 minutes to make sure you're there. The electric mixer. Beat the eggs and 2/3 cup of sugar in the bowl until just blended. More lies. Madeleines and some other cookies rely on a process called mechanical leavening. This means that you beat air into the batter, and that air will expand to make the cookies fluffy. This is different than just a chemical leavener like baking powder, which combines with heat and acid to release carbon dioxide. So this isn't really a blend, it's a beating. You want to incorporate a lot of air in there. And you want to keep doing that until the sugar and the eggs turn a pale yellow and form ribbons like the picture up on the website. Then you beat in the vanilla, the lemon peel, and the salt. This is easy. It's pretty much straightforward. Just mix it all in. Then you add the flour and beat until just blended. Only this time, while they say beat, there's no beating. When flour gets wet, it starts to form gluten. And gluten makes cookies chewy, not fluffy. So no beating here. This is a gently folding technique where you take a spatula and you essentially do a figure 8 as you get the flour incorporated. Finally, there's the adding of the butter. And you want that butter incorporated quick. And so that's why there's a quick movement. So turn on the beater and then slowly pour in a continuous drizzle all of that butter until it gets incorporated into the dough. Do it quickly so that you don't spend a lot of time building up any more gluten. And that's that. Your dough is ready. Now the recipe doesn't say so, but it's also not ready to bake. The dough needs to sit for about 30 minutes to let the flavors blend and to thicken up a little bit before baking. So on to the pan itself. You don't really need a Madeleine pan, but a Madeleine is a scallop shape, so it's probably good to have one. You can still do this as a regular round cookie. Just let the batter spread. As it's getting baked, you'll get a perfectly round cookie. If you use a Madeleine pan or you go out and get one, I suggest the silicone ones. They're a lot easier to work with and they help with unmolding the cookie. Even without them, you can save time by using a non-stick spray rather than buttering and flouring the pan each time you use it. That non-stick spray is just canola oil and will work just fine. Spray each mold before it's used and you're ready to go. Now finally, how big is the Madeleine? Well, the pan maker has probably done that for you, but just to verify, Madeleine should be about 3 inches in length and about 1 1/4 inches in width. If you have one that has a slightly larger cookie, just realize that you're going to have a little bit more batter use and it'll take a slightly longer time to bake. But you should be using about a tablespoon of batter for each indentation in the mold. Now on to the baking. You bake them until brown, and the recipe says 16 minutes. Nope. Turn the oven light on and watch them carefully. They are done once they have puffed in the middle and set. I like mine to go just a little bit longer so that the edges are slightly brown, but there's no timer here. You watch them. It's the easiest thing to do, and you'll guarantee yourself that you're getting a good crisp Madeleine. Finally, the recipe says to let them cool for 5 minutes. And yes, that means in the pan and all. You want that pan to cool down enough so that you can touch it to allow you to unmold the cookie. You don't want the cookies to completely cool in the pan. You want them to stay warm. And your unmolding technique, if you're using a silicone pan, is just to pop them out. But if you're using a metal pan, you might want to use a skewer or a toothpick to help dislodge each cookie as needed. Don't use anything larger like a spoon. A spoon will likely break the cookies. The skewers or the toothpicks are best. And finally, the recipe says dust the cookies with powdered sugar. No. Cool the cookies on a wire rack completely, probably for about 30 minutes, if not more. And then, when you're ready to eat them, you dust them. That powdered sugar, in fact, all sugar, attracts moisture. So if you powder them and then you let them sit, that sugar will attract some moisture from the air. So the cookies become less crisp. The better strategy is to cool the cookies, and then when you're ready to serve them, go ahead and powder them at that moment. So that's it. Time to enjoy the Madeleines. The recipe is simple, but highlights a backstory that's important. Whatever cookie recipe you work with for this Yule, all of those techniques apply. Room temperature ingredients, good ingredient, light touches with flour, and eyes as timers. So have fun baking, and happy Yule.
Hello, my name is Shaylee. Welcome to Nice Witch, a Miss Manners segment for all Wiccans, witches, and pagans alike. Today's topic is common sense. Yes, I know, common sense isn't always as common as we like it to be. But if we all put forth a little effort, we can make a difference. As we approach the coming season of Yule, this wonderful time of the year where feasting is almost a daily thing, I thought this might be a good time to discuss common sense. This time of year, everywhere you turn, there is some festival, winter wonderland, event, or holiday party to attend. It's a time of excess food, alcohol, partying, gift-giving, and yes, most oftentimes excess emotions. Remember, some common sense can get you through this time of year with hopefully only the best of experiences. Every gathering can provide a different experience. One should never assume that a party, event, ritual, or festival they are attending will fit their own personal beliefs. After all, you know what they say about assuming. But seriously, we can be funny about our beliefs and expectations, especially when we are attending something new. We go in with preconceived notions and often fail at not making assumptions. Common sense tells us, of course, others are going to do things differently. But yet when we encounter those differences, some people are offended, outraged, and even disappointed. Common sense also tells us to be respectful of the places and people around us. When we go to someone's event, we need to be respectful of them and their ways. Yet, once offended, outraged, and or disappointed, we tend to lose that respect. We should attend every event that is given by someone else as an opportunity to learn something new, and to see the season through their eyes or their tradition. Having different experiences enrich our own practices as it gives us new perspectives and new ideas that we might incorporate into our own traditions. If you find yourself getting offended or upset, take a deep breath and calm yourself. After all, this is not your event. If you find you can't participate, kindly and respectfully leave, and just know this is not for you. It sounds silly, and you may be sitting listening to this thinking to yourself, sheesh, maybe even dismissing this topic. But think about it. When was the last time you attended a party, a gathering, or a festival and someone got out of control? Some guests got wasted. Some guests got angry and caused a ruckus. Don't you remember thinking to yourself, this is not the time or place for this? I myself have experienced where others have overindulged at an event, and their subsequent bad behavior negatively impacted other people's enjoyment of the event. The saddest part was these individuals did not seem to remember or be aware of this happening. Don't let that be you. This is a reminder that even though it's a fun party time of year, we still need to act like adults, and that Wicca teaches us personal responsibility. That teaching doesn't go out the window just because someone has 2 or 3 glasses of wine before a ritual, or at least it shouldn't. Common sense says that if you make a fool of yourself, you probably won't be invited back. Using your common sense is important and really not all that hard to apply. If we remember to be kind to each other, be respectful of one another, and not make assumptions without facts, and overall be patient with one another, we are using our common sense. So remember, whether we are gathering to honor the gods, celebrate the seasons, mark the turning of the wheel, perform rituals, simply enjoy each other's company, or whatever the reason may be, we are gathering, and we need to be considerate of each other. So enjoy yourselves, and remember to be a nice witch.
Next up, we have a song by Emerald Rose, extremely popular for this time of year, called Santa Claus is Pagan Too. It's from their Rants and Rambles album. You can learn more about Emerald Rose on their website, www.emeraldrose.com.
Oh, Santa Claus is pagan too, just like all the rest. And if you are a merry witch, he'll bring you all the best. So get that star up on the roof and bake those cookies too. 'Cause Christmas time is really Yule, and Santa's pagan too. He's got that Buddha belly, and his top's the Holly King. You dressed him in that British coat, the cap's a Nordic thing. You took the horns right off his head and stuck them on his deer. But he still flies high like Jupiter with a belly full of beer. Hey, Santa Claus is pagan too, just like all the rest. And if you are a merry witch, he'll bring you all the best. So get that star up on the roof and bake those cookies too. 'Cause Christmas time is really Yule, and Santa's pagan too. Now history says Christ was likely not a Capricorn. But if you want to share our Yule, we don't care when he's born. Come celebrate the dawning of the Sun King's bright rebirth. And if you practice what you preach, we'll all have peace on earth. Hey, Santa Claus is pagan too, just like all the rest. And if you are a merry witch, he'll bring you all the best. So get that star up on the roof and bake those cookies too. 'Cause Christmas time is really Yule, and Santa's pagan too. Now Santa's way more jolly than most Christians would require. And if you weren't so busy, he'd be dancing around this fire. Yeah, you can call it Christmas, you got his way outgunned. But just you wait till Beltane, then we'll see who's having fun. Hey, Santa Claus is pagan too, just like all the rest. And if you are a merry witch, he'll bring you all the best. So get that star up on the roof and bake those cookies too. 'Cause Christmas time is really Yule, and Santa's pagan too. Hey, Santa Claus is pagan too, just like all the rest. And if you are a merry witch, he'll bring you all the best. So get that star up on the roof and bake those cookies too. 'Cause Christmas time is really Yule, and Santa's pagan too.
We are here with Lord Riekin, going through the medicinal uses for spices in the kitchen. And Lord Riekin, what letters do you have for us this episode?
Well, tonight we're going to have M, N, and O.
M and O. We're getting there.
Yeah. This is going to be a faster segment than you think, surprisingly. We're going to go over mace, marjoram, nutmeg, and oregano. But mace is tied in with nutmeg, as you all know. And whether you know it or not, marjoram and oregano are also basically just variations of the same thing as well. So just each is one stronger than the other. We're going to start with mace. And you might think to yourself, I mean, I certainly did. I thought, oh, mace is just the poor relative of nutmeg. But it turns out that in many ways, mace is the more powerful. Mace, of course, is the outer hull of the nutmeg pod. But it actually has up to 9 times the vitamin C that the nutmeg has. It has between 3 and 5 times the essential oils that the nutmeg seed has.
I didn't know that nutmeg was renowned for vitamin C.
Well, it isn't.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
you're not going to get your vitamins. Well, actually, you could get your vitamin C allotment from nutmeg mace if you really had to, but you'd be hallucinating while you did it, so that could be fun.
And the downside is?
Yeah, so that could be fun. At least you wouldn't care if you weren't getting your vitamin C, right?
Right.
So, at any rate, mace has a higher concentration of all the essential oils that nutmeg has. Now, nutmeg has some things that mace doesn't have. It's worth touching on both of them, but it does allow us to kind of go through them really fast. So at any rate, mace has strong antifungal properties, antidepressant properties, aphrodisiac properties. It's a digestive aid, a pain reliever. It's got eugenol in it, among other things. But, of course, eugenol is used, clove oil. Eugenol is used for pain relief, particularly topical pain relief. There's 4 times more iron in the mace than there is in the nutmeg. Things like that. It's really quite surprising. For future reference, anybody who wants to have mace in their vice rack, buy mace blades rather than the powdered mace, because when you powder the mace, the essential oils that are what you want disappear rather quickly. The blades are slices of that outer husk, and you grind them as needed. And so you'll have a much stronger use of the essential oils. Now, the thing about mace, or nutmeg for that matter, is that in practical terms, it's not really available to you. Not that you can't go out and buy it, but it's really mace oils, nutmeg oils, which you can't really do. There's really not much in the way of making a tea. Most of these things that we're going through is because you can make a simple of the tea, a simple being, a tea that's made with 1 or just 2 herbs in it.
But I only have powdered mace. I've never seen mace in any other form.
Right. Well, mace does come in blades, and it's readily available as blades as well.
And that you could make a tea of the blades?
Well, you could, but again, this is one of those cases where you really need to let your food be your medicine.
So just use it in cooking.
Yeah, you really want to use it in your cooking. You want to ingest the powder, but you don't want to ingest the powder as the powder, because that would probably do you as much bad as good.
So not straight, but just throw it in whatever you're baking. Because mace is usually, if I'm remembering correctly, because it's been so long since I've actually used it for anything. But I think mace is more in pies and things.
Yes, you can use mace for anything that you would use nutmeg for, of course. Pumpkin pie spice, certainly nutmeg and mace. It can be used in my making krupnikos, and of course an alcohol extraction of it would get you a pretty good amount. I mean, if you had a bad toothache and your leg was broken, you couldn't get to the store to buy some clove oil, and you didn't have cloves in the house, but you did have some mace in the house, you could powder the mace or grind up the mace, put it with some alcohol, let it soak for a while, and then swish your mouth with that. And it would probably do the trick. But really, accessing mace and nutmeg, basically it's just the same thing. For our purposes, which are medicinal, the main thing is just to remember that if you use a high dose, it can cause confusion, lack of focus, it can cause sweating, palpitations, muscle pains, hallucinations, and delirium. Hence the reason oil of nutmeg was often used for taking a trip. It's been used topically on more sensitive parts of the body to induce hallucinatory states and such.
Is it possible that nutmeg oil might have been part of the old flying ointment recipes?
Yep.
I thought that's where you were going.
Yes, I've researched that and found many of the recipes that relied extensively on nutmeg oils.
Uh-huh.
And you can just, nutmeg oil applied topically to the skin can, in some of the more sensitive areas of the body, at any rate, can certainly have an hallucinatory effect. But that's not what this is about. This is about medicinal purposes.
Yeah, but that's probably more interesting.
Yeah.
But you're not actually encouraging people to use it that way, though.
No, I'm not. Okay, so let's move on to more productive things. And the more productive things, in this case, is marjoram and oregano. As I said before, depending upon who you talk to and where you are in the world, marjoram is often considered to be the primary plant. Marjoram and oregano are both members of the mint family, and they're both members of the genus underneath that. Marjoram is actually more widely used and known, but the dividing line between marjoram and oregano can be kind of unclear at times. It's one of those things where there's a lot of crossbreeding and a lot of variations, and the variations between marjoram and oregano can get to the point where you can slip from one into the other without really quite knowing it. They're not the same species, but there's a lot of potential for cross-pollination and crossbreeding in some parts of the world. The nicer thing about marjoram, nobody would ever suggest giving oregano to a baby. But with marjoram, you could make a marjoram tea for runny noses and colds in infants, for dry coughs and ear pain and such. Again, tea. Here's the thing. Everything I'm going to tell you about here for oregano and marjoram is mostly going to be in the form of a tea. We are going to talk about oregano oil, because I'm a firm believer in oregano oil. Would not be without it in the bathroom. I would not have it in the medicine cabinet. I would not have it in the spice rack, as I say.
Right.
But if you go into my bathroom right now, you will find oregano oil there where I use it when I'm brushing my teeth and such. And I've also used it topically. But we'll get to that in a minute. Marjoram, as a tea, can be used for even small children, relief of runny noses and cold symptoms, dry coughs, ear pain, and such. Marjoram tea can be used for digestive problems, for gas, cramps. Marjoram tea can be used to bring on menstruation when it's delayed. It's not terribly strong compared to oregano. I still probably would not use it if you were pregnant or breastfeeding, because it could promote your period, which could cause a miscarriage if you're pregnant, and could cause your milk to stop if you were breastfeeding. Though these are two symptoms that usually we'll touch on again. I'll remind you of them again when we get to oregano. Okay, I didn't really come up with any information like that when I was looking at the marjoram into things. Marjoram is a tea, can be used as a nerve tonic, a heart tonic. It improves blood circulation and such. In other words, marjoram was one of the plants that was often used as a spring blood thinner, as a spring tonic, which is primarily means it thins the blood. Oh. People used to think that their blood is getting heavy over the winter. Basically, yeah, your blood really did get full of a lot of compounds and things that you weren't getting out because you really lacked the proper vitamins and things to stimulate the body systems to get them out the right way. And marjoram leaves as a tea was used as a spring tonic to cleanse the blood. When you make a reference like that, you're usually talking about it has a stimulant effect on the liver and the kidneys, gallbladder, constantly mentioned for use around the gallbladder.
What does it do for the gallbladder?
Well, if you're not at the point where you're having a medical problem with your gallbladder, it could probably help to keep you from having it, because it's supposed to keep everything in solution and keep things moving the way they're supposed to.
So it might help prevent gallstones?
Yes.
If you were prone for those?
Yes. I would say more in the form of just make sure you use marjoram in your cooking and such. And
yeah, it's not something that's usually found in recipes, so it might be something you have to actually add. Or
marjoram could be used as a milder form of oregano in most recipes that use
So if
oregano.
it tastes like oregano, you could add it to Italian salad dressing.
Yep.
Or soups or anything like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's no problem at all. Teas made from marjoram can be used in cases of depression, dizziness, migraines, nervous headaches, nerve pain. You know, as a tea, it simply is a very good tonic on the body. It is gentle, mildly acting. You know, you might not see much of an effect from it if you just take it a couple of times a day for 2 to 3 days, but if you take it once or twice a day for 3 weeks, I think you will see a general improvement in your physical condition, in your the cleansing of your circulatory system and such.
That brings up an interesting point. and I may not be the only one who thinks that, so maybe you want to touch on this. When people, or when I hear spring tonic, I think of something that you drink once and you're done. But it sounds to me like you're suggesting that in order for these things to really work, you'd have to take them once or twice a day for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 21 days.
Yeah, somewhere in that range, yes. Spring tonic, you make up a big batch of spring tonic and you take it certainly over the course of a week or more. Basically, it's something that's full of vitamins and helps to cleanse the blood. I don't think there's nothing you can take one time to cleanse the blood. You take apple cider vinegar. Think of it in terms like that. We use apple cider vinegar. You take it once or twice a day, a couple of tablespoons, but you do it for several weeks.
I see. Okay. Well, I don't think we've ever touched on that before.
Yeah, no, none of this stuff is overwhelmingly strong enough to have any particular impact on the system if only used once or twice. Many medicinal herbs would have to be taken for a 3-month period to report some of the results that they get from them. Some of the things I mentioned here, certainly not colds, coughs, things like that, but if you were going to be taking oregano to reduce your bad cholesterol and raise your good cholesterol, which has been shown to do, but that's taken for a 3-month period, and the testing's done at the end of that period, you're not going to do anything about your cholesterol overnight. I mean, oregano has been proven through scientific studies to be very good at stimulating the body's, I mean, it's not going to knock down high cholesterol, but what it can do is kind of tweak how much of your cholesterol is bad and how much of your cholesterol is good. Things like that. So we might just as well go ahead and get into oregano then. Here's an interesting thing. Oregano's antibiotic properties are so strong that in a number of tests, oregano has been proven to kill MRSA.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. The disease that has no antibiotic, we found with garlic can kill MRSA and oregano can kill MRSA.
Now, is that oregano oil or oregano leaf?
Well, that's the oregano oil. If you're chewing the leaf, a coworker of mine at work at the moment is having a problem with an infected tooth. They intend on taking the tooth out in January, but it's really causing her a lot of trouble now. And the other day I told her to go home. I asked her if she had an oregano plant growing at home, and she told me she did. And I said to go home and pick a leaf off and chew it, and then hold the chewed cud under her tongue for a while. It would burn some, but not to worry. And she's been slowly nibbling away at her oregano ever since because she noticed an immediate reduction in the amount of pain from the infection in her tooth.
Oh, that's good. Up
in the gum, which is the same reason you see me using oregano oil, because I certainly had my own dental issues. And oregano was even when I was taking an antibiotic, the antibiotic worked much better when I added in the oregano tablets. I stopped them when I started taking the antibiotic, and the antibiotic wasn't giving me as much relief as the oregano capsules were. I added the oregano capsules back in, and the combination of the two really did a 1-2 punch on the infection in my mouth. I'm a firm believer in oregano, so let's swing in there. Most of the stuff I'm going to talk about with oregano, I'm cheating here because it's going to be the oregano oil.
Okay.
But as I just said, you can chew fresh oregano leaves.
And you can buy oregano leaves in the grocery store.
Yeah,
if you're not in an area.
You can buy harvested oregano leaves if you can't grow a plant. Yeah, you can go into Publix or wherever you might be and, go over to the produce section and you can buy a big clump of oregano leaves and you can keep them in the fridge. Or you can put some of them in some water. Might even root 1 or 2. Who knows? But here's the thing. Oregano oil taken internally, and I'm not quite sure how to do that safely, but...
In a capsule.
Okay. Kills intestinal parasites. It killed more than 47 different kinds of listeria.
Well, you know that one of the things that I take when I get a cold is oregano oil, and the other one is olive leaf.
Olive leaf oil,
and
yes.
I bought
it's a carrier.
Not oil, but the olive
tablets,
leaf
yeah.
and the oregano oil, and I got them in capsule form because Donna Pantera had recommended it, and it kicked that cold quick.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'd been using it for about 6 months before then, but you wouldn't believe me. You believe Donna Pantera.
Well, she's a nurse.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe her. I believe you too, sweetheart, but I didn't have access to it until I went over to visit her because there's a store where she lives in Tampa that specifically had it. I didn't have to order it.
True. At that point, I was just using the oil. I hadn't started using the tablets yet. I had gotten the tablets by the time you ordered yours, but it's quite true. The two really didn't. Oregano oil can help in wound healing, topically speaking. It can improve the skin. Rubbed on damaged skin, it can help to thicken and tone up and improve the healing of the skin. Of course, oregano is used for asthma, bronchitis, coughs, flu, indigestion. Some of these things you want to put some oregano oil in a glass of hot water and sniff it.
Oh.
Yeah, so, for asthma and such. And here is where you can just use oregano leaf. That is the dried leaf that's in your spice rack. You can simmer that in some water and use it for bronchitis and asthma and such.
As a steam?
As a steam.
Oh, the little steamer we used to put the Vicks in?
Vicks in, yeah. Things like
I
that.
getcha.
Oregano oil kills intestinal parasites. It can kill 47 different kinds of listeria they found so far. It helps in wound healing. It repels insects. That is, you put a little bit of oregano oil in some alcohol and rub it on as an insecticide or as a mosquito repellent. Okay, so you're at one and the same time. It's doing something good for your skin and helping to repel insects. And if it happens you get caught by a witch and cooked, well, you already become self-basting.
Oh, that's bad.
But using it as a tea from the powdered oregano, or better by far, of course, the dried oregano leaf or some fresh oregano leaves. But anyway, getting into tea, you can use it for asthma, bronchitis, coughs, flu, and such. You can just put it in a pan on the stove, simmer it, and breathe in the steam to help with asthma and bronchitis. Certainly as a tea, it can be used for indigestion, bloating, to ease menstrual pains, to promote menstruation if it's delayed. It can be used for arthritis. It can be used for headaches and throat conditions, of course.
So arthritis, are you rubbing it on topically or taking it internally or both?
From my understanding, there are those who have made a strong simmered wash of it and rubbed it on the skin. Of course, the oil could be used on the skin, particularly if heated up on the stove and such, or added to some alcohol and used that way. I don't think you're using it internally for arthritis, really. I think you're mostly using it topically on the skin, yes. But whether you can really get much benefit from a wash, well, again, with most of these things that we're talking about in the kitchen cabinet, it's late at night and you don't have any Bengay in the house. I mean, it's not like, I'm going to do this instead of Bengay. What, you crazy? If you got it, use it. If you don't have it, this might save you a trip in the middle of the night and allow you to get a good night's sleep. Use what you have on hand, but don't rely on it, obviously. It's better to get something that's more specific. Okay, granted, in terms of the oregano, that's about as specific as I get. I always have both straight up oregano oil in the house, and I like having my oregano and olive leaf oil tablets, and I use them to stimulate healing from the inside. And they do quite a good job of that, at least I believe so.
But it's very interesting to see how many different uses a lot of these spices have medicinally, which kind of leads me to the thought that it may be why we cook with them, why there are so many spices that you cook with. Because
well, yes and no. Yes, you're absolutely right. And the no isn't that you're wrong. It's just that one of the reasons that we use a lot of the spices we use, such as garlic and oregano and such, is that these things have strong antibiotic properties. They have strong antifungal properties. They help preserve meats. Back in the day when you didn't have refrigeration and such and you didn't want the meat to go off, you could use rubs and, treat them with, if you wrap them in these leaves and such, or use these oils on them, or squeeze these juices on them, They were preserved much better. They couldn't grow molds and go bad on you. And if they were going a little off, well, if you threw plenty of, we didn't really understand some of the mechanisms here. Some of the mechanisms we did. But if you throw plenty of garlic and oregano in the pot along with that stew meat that went off a little bit, it's not likely to kill you because you put in some medicinals that were good for indigestion and colic and bloating anyway. Now, understand, of course, that there's a big difference between ingesting bad bacteria on meat, and then it's the bacteria that are going to attack your system. Cooking it with all these herbs and things are going to completely eliminate that problem, and that is the more common problem, having some bacteria on the meats. To get the bacteria on it that produce a byproduct, a waste product, whatever you want to call it from their standpoint, that is absolutely poisonous to man and that is not broken down by heat from boiling it or searing or cooking it, such as botulism or something, I don't know. But there are some chemical compounds that are just bloody-ass poisonous and are not relieved by heat. Heat takes care of heat deactivates or breaks down many poisons that would otherwise do us in, and they certainly kills a lot of bacteria. But if you're not certain that boiling alone is going to do it, if you got some garlic and some oregano in that water, first, you're not going to taste the off taste of the meat. Second, you're going to kill all those bacteria and, destroy a lot of byproducts. So we've kind of gotten used to cooking with these items.
Because it was safer.
It was safer to have been using these items at that point. That's why I sound like such a broken record as I get further and further into this whole thing, because how often do I say that the spice is good for taking care of bloating and intestinal issues
and digestive issues,
and it's good as an antibiotic. It's like most of these things that this is what they're all good for. It is what they're all good for, because this is what we needed in order to grow a civilization when you didn't have refrigeration. In Roman times, you were slaughtering the animals out in the outside the walls of the city, and you were bringing this stuff in, and the flies were on it the whole time, and then it had to get sold off. So there's a day or two between, the killing and the eating, and there's no refrigeration involved there. And yet, the civilization survived on garlic. You see.
Well, so when the zombie apocalypse comes, we have to be growing a lot of garlic and oregano.
Yeah, and if we do, zombies are probably going to go, ooh, what is that smell? I'm going that way.
Well, once again, Lord Riekin, thank you so much. And are you going to start covering the peas next week with paprika?
Well, paprika is just a very mild form of red pepper. So I'll touch on it, but medicinally speaking, you're a lot better off reaching for your red pepper flakes than you are your paprika.
Well, thank you, Lord Riekin. As always, very interesting and informative, and we're more prepared for the zombie apocalypse.
Hello, crafters. This is Pandie, and it's time for another one of Pandie's Pagan projects. We're busy getting the house ready for Yule, and you know what that means. Lots of shopping, finding this year's Yule log, and most importantly, decorating our Yule tree. But why just hang boring ornaments on the tree when you can hang ornaments filled with a spell for the coming year? To make your spell ornaments, you will need clear glass or plastic ornaments that you can open in some way, spell components such as herbs, crystals, ribbons, etc. Just make sure that the items you pick will fit into your ornament. You'll also need a pen, marker, or paint for decorating the outside of the ornament if you choose to. And finally, a funnel, especially if you're using a glass ornament that will have a small opening at the top for items. The hardest part will be deciding what you want the purpose of your spell ornament to be. You may want to infuse the holiday season with peace and harmony, especially if you're having a lot of family over. Maybe you've got big plans for changes in the coming year, and you want to use the energy of the growing sun to get the ball rolling. Whatever your purpose, gather the herbs, stones, and other items you want to use to achieve it. Be sure that the items you gather will fit through the opening of your ornament. There's nothing worse than finding the perfect stone, but it's just too big to fit. You may even want to write on your ornament. This could be sigils, runes, a saying, or something else personal to you and to the spell. Be sure that the paints or markers that you choose will work on the surface of your ornament. To get going, open up your ornament. Some plastic ornaments pop open in half like Easter eggs. Glass ornaments and other types of plastic ones will only open from the top. Carefully remove the cap on these because we'll need them later to close everything up. If you're going to be putting writing on your ornament, this would be the best time to do it. You don't want to try and write on it while it's filled with good stuff, especially if you took the time to get the layers to look just right, like I'm about to. Now that the ornament is open and you've got your writing on it, it's time to start layering the items for your spell. As you do this, you'll want to hold the intent of your spell in your mind. I find that it helps to use a chant to keep my focus on the task at hand. One that I like to use is, "Ball of magic made by me to hang upon my Yuletide tree. Good health shall come to me, as I do will, so mote it be." If you use this chant, exchange good health for whatever energy you're looking to infuse into your spell. Carefully feed the spell components into your ornament. This is where a funnel can help if you have a narrow opening at the top of your ornament. If you're finding things are getting stuck, you can use a toothpick or even a chopstick to help push your items through the funnel. After everything's tucked inside, close the ornament up. Either fit the halves back together or press the cap gently back into place. Now, hold your ornament in your hands and use your favorite method of powering up an item to charge the ornament for its purpose. If you're using ribbons, now is a great time to tie them around the ornament, and as you do so, seal the spell. As you may have noticed, I'm a huge fan of chants, so I use this popular chant to seal my spell. I call on earth to bind my spell, air to speed its travel well, fire give its spirit from above, and water quench my spell with love. Now, hang your ornament on your Yule tree and feel it start to radiate its energy through your house and into your life. These are not only great for your family, but they also make terrific Yule gifts for witchy friends. Have fun crafting! I'd love to see how your ornaments turn out. Head over to our website, emlc.net, and click on the podcast tab. Then leave a comment on this episode with your picture of your ornament. Blessed be!
Hi everyone! Before we begin our last segment of this episode, we'd like to thank you for listening. Putting a podcast together is a time-consuming labor of love, but knowing that someone is listening to our hard work and hopefully gaining something from it makes it worthwhile. Would you let us know you like the podcast? By going to our website at emlc.net, click on the podcast tab, and write a comment. Tell us what you like and what you'd like to hear more of on our podcast. And even better, why not leave us a rating on iTunes? Ratings help us become more visible to more people. It's not about ego, it's all about service. Thank you, and blessed be.
We'll be ending the show with a really cool song from Mama Gina called Old Ways, which is on her album Solitaire. You can learn more about Mama Gina and buy her music at www.mamaginamusic.com, and it's spelled Mamagina, so that's mamaginamusic.com. Enjoy!
This land, but I've seen the wildflowers grow in gardens forgotten, and they're on the side of the road. I hear that the old gods have left us and new ones are taking their place. But I still see in every tree a face. And I will keep the old ways always. Yes, I will keep the old ways always. Say that the old ones are silent, but I've heard the whippoorwill at 4 a.m. he calls and I hear him still. I hear that the stars are all fading. We're making our own kind of light, but I know a dark road I can travel and still see the night. And I will keep the old ways always. Yes, I will keep the old ways always. Flame and the passion, the blood and the ocean, the sky and the notion that all is divine. The good earth she grows me, the mother she holds me, my spirit flies free, and the prayer that hears mine. Yes, I will keep the old ways always. I will keep the old ways always. They say that there's nothing worth saving. The magic is already flown, but I